And I want to focus a little bit for this time of reflection on one of those hounds, which is fear, because I believe probably if you had to try to drill down everything to say, what is the most challenging thing that we have to face in this present 21st century moment, that the answer would be fear, that we have to encounter. And I just want to read a little passage here and then say some things about this. He begins this chapter by saying, fear is one of the persistent hounds of hell, the dog, the footsteps of the poor, the dispossessed, the disinherited. There's nothing new or recent about fear. It is doubtless as old as the life of man on the planet. Fears of many kinds, fears of objects, people, the future, fear of nature, fear of the unknown, fear of old age, fear of disease, and fear of life itself. Then there is fear which has to do with aspects of experience and detailed states of mind. Our homes, institutions, prisons, churches are crowded with people who are hounded by day and harrowed by night because of some fear that lurks ready to spring into action as soon as one is alone, or as soon as the lights go out, or as soon as one's social defenses are temporarily removed. And, we spend a lot of time reasserting many things about Jesus. And we spend way too little time talking about the ways in which Jesus's back was against the wall. Jesus was a Jew in Palestine. And listen at what Thurman has to say about the status that he had. His days were nurtured in great hostilities, focused upon his kind, the sons of Israel. There was no moment in all of his years when he was free, because he was a second-class citizen. And I think that we don't spend enough time reflecting on that. And what does that mean? And what are the implications of that understanding as we try to deal with our interactions with one another in the present moment? I think that all of our gathering places, our churches and places of worship, could do well to begin to sit a bit with, how do we speak to that? How do we create spaces where people can be invited to be honest about what those fears are and about the ways in which that fear runs their life? Because in so many ways, we have allowed the fear to become the factor, the primary factor, the organizing principle, the ways in which we end up engaging with one another. And for people who are disinherited, there's nowhere for them to go. If you worry that you will be denigrated, marginalized, abused, put out to the edge and made into a non-important person. And so you live with that, and you live with the everyday ongoing necessity to try to see how to stay ahead of that. And that leads to the chapter that he deals with on deception, because one of the ways the disinherited deal with their plight and with this fear is by using deception. It's almost like you have to, like the rabbit saying, "Don't throw me in the briar patch," but that's exactly where he wants to go. Or the little bird that rolls over and plays dead when the hawk comes, because it's got to deceive this enemy. But if you are this disenfranchised person, as was Jesus, in an environment where you don't have any recourse because other disenfranchised people cannot do anything to help you, you cannot go to your persecutor and complain about persecution. I mean, that doesn't work too well. And so where do you stand and who are you in that? And Thurman talks about this, of course, from the perspective of, in this country, African Americans and white people, and he's talking about segregation and the ways in which fear is one of the primary elements to keep that system intact. I mean, we know from our own understanding of history that things such as lynching, which was an act of terror designed to reinforce you don't exist, you have no power, you are nobody, and whatever happens to you, you have no recourse. And this was the plight of the Jew called Jesus from Palestine. And that's the thing that for Thurman that's so important, because it gives him this place to stand. You stand with this person who definitely knows what your plight is. And that is the thing that helps you to be some release from some of this, because then you find a way to go in almost into another realm. You go to a place where these externals to you can't do to you what they would intend to do. And one of the things Thurman talked about so much in all of his work is the whole business of coming to grips with yourself and knowing what your core is. You know, he's always talking about looking for the sound of the genuine and looking for it, and then knowing when you find it and living that out, reinforcing that. That's all internal kind of journey. And that's, you know, when you think about a lot of the things that Jesus is saying, so much of what Jesus is saying all of the time has to do with this coming to terms with being helpless up against a set of circumstances. It interests me so much to think about that people thought Jesus was going to come and set up a kingdom. And we created a whole lot of stuff that reinforces that notion. You know, I can't stand singing songs about Jesus as king. I just can't stand it because it's so bad. The theology is so bad because Jesus was not about that. Jesus was about the establishment of an understanding of something that is not going to be penetrated by externals to you, that this kind of environment that oppresses and represses and wants to annihilate you can't do anything to you. You know, Thurman said he spent a lot of time trying to understand what was it that made the slaves keep going. You know, what was it that made them get up in the mornings and keep on going? What was it that gave them hope? What was it that made them sing the songs they sang? That, you know, when you have been separated from everything that you know and knew, that was your language, your customs, your food, your people, your ways of being in the world, and here you have to figure out how to survive. And something was triggered to make them do it. And Jesus is inviting us always into that process, always into going there rather than trying to see what the external world is going to do to make us be able to make it. So his days were nurtured in great hostilities, focused upon his kind, the sons of Israel. There was no moment in all his years when he was free. We don't like to think about that. We don't want to think about that. We want to think about the triumphant Jesus coming into Jerusalem, and you know, we want to be, we want to believe that that there's nothing here but getting what you need some kind of way, and there's going to be this king and kingdom, and things are going to get all resolved, and everything's going to be great. I remember when I was a little kid and we used to sing these songs about going to this land of milk and honey. I am so glad, because I do not like milk or honey. And so I'm glad I don't have to be going there, you know, because, and with the streets were paved of gold, and, you know, so glory, hallelujah, it's going to be. And that's got nothing to do with the Jew from Palestine who lived his entire life with his back against the wall. So if he lived his life with his back against the wall, he understands what it means to have your life be pent in that way. He can understand what it's like to live every day with people hating you because your skin is black or brown, to live every day because your hair is a certain way, to live being denigrated for no reason except that you are you. You have done nothing. You have not offended anybody. You haven't tried to hurt anybody. You're just walking on the planet because God gave you life, and you are hated for that. That was Jesus, the Jew from Palestine. So Jesus knows the disinherited in ways that we don't want to let ourselves know. Because if we let ourselves know that person, we then may have to deal with our own sense of not being enough to stand against so many of the things in life that you can't do anything about.